All right, guys, I'm so excited to have everyone here for a fun art class. I'm glad that you're going to get to join today, and we're going to do this fun, colorful, abstract kind of version of the dandelion puffs. So these are like dandelion puffs, and we're going to do some fun color, and I'll show you this neat kind of black, streaky, kind of wash that we're going to put over top of it. So let's go through what we need to do this painting, okay? So obviously you'll need a clean canvas. The one I'm going to be using is an 8 by 10 size, same size as my example, but you can do a little bit larger, but I like the 8 by 10, it goes a little faster. I'm going to be using a big flat brush today, so it's flat on one side, kind of square. And then I'm also going to be using kind of more of a round brush, so it comes more to a tip, right? So I kind of have a point to it. I'm also going to utilize some chalk. Now my chalk looks like it has a point because I put it in a little pencil sharpener to kind of put it at a point, but you don't have to. It can just be any piece of chalk. It could be sidewalk chalk, any color, and that's just going to help us kind of draw some stuff in before we paint. And then we've got all of our colors. So all the paintings that I teach, I only use 5 different colors. We use the primary colors, the blue, our red, and our yellow. And then we will bring in some black and some white. So this painting uses all of those colors. It's also a lot easier to probably see all of those colors because you can see obviously the red and the blue and the yellow and the black and the white. There's some other paintings that we've done where we will mix colors to get different ones like green or darker red or darker blues. But today we are going to stick with just kind of more the colors that come out. We might get a little bit of a lighter blue coming out with that, but let's get started. Okay, I'm going to move my example over to this canvas and move your angle so you can see what we're doing. Oh, I also have some water right here to rinse out my brush. I also have a rag. I use just some old towels as my rag to dry that off. And we're going to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my flat brush. That will be the first tool that I'll use. And we're going to go ahead and get out our colors. So I'm going to put on my plate right here. I like to use a foam plate. Paper plate sometimes will kind of suck out the moisture, but a foam plate will keep my paint right there on top. And so I'm going to go ahead and get out a little bit of red, and I'm going to go ahead and get out a little bit of blue. I don't get out my colors that much ahead of time because if I'm not using them, they can start to dry out. So I kind of get them out as I'm going to use them, but we will go ahead and start with our 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. Kind of space them out, give me some space to get to each of the colors. And I might go ahead and grab a little bit of white on here too. Just a little bit of white I might use. So I've got 4 colors on my plate, and we are going to get started putting in some colors. So when I grab my brush, brushes do not like to go into paint dry. They always want to be moist. Either that, or if we put this straight into the paint, it'll just suck up all the moisture out of our paint. And we don't want that. We want the moisture to be going on our canvas. So first thing I do is I take my brush, dip it in water, and I can just drag off the edge. I drag off my brush on the edge of my paint cup. Look at my paint cup, so much paint, oh my goodness. But that gets me ready. So I'm gonna look at our example, and the easiest thing for us will be to start with that bright yellow in the center, right? So we're gonna do a nice little streak of yellow in the center of our canvas. So I'm gonna grab some paint right there on my brush. And I'm just going to do an up and down motion with that yellow. And it's going to seem really, really bright, like, oh my goodness, who put in the caution sign yellow on my painting. Do not worry, we're going to be able to tone this yellow down later on, but we're just going to do, see, that's about 2 inches. An inch, I normally measure about one little part of my knuckle to the next little part of my knuckle. That's about 2 inches, right? So that's about part of my finger wide. I don't need to do too much. I want to have space for some other colors. And it doesn't have to be perfectly. See, it's a little wider down here and smaller up there. That's fine. Absolutely fine. So I'm just going to streak a yellow and then rinse my brush. We're going to try to keep our colors a little more like kind of more pure and not mixing as much. So we'll rinse pretty well in between using our colors, right? So I've got the yellow mixed out of there. Now I want to make sure everyone's having a chance to put that yellow in. I don't want to go too fast for anyone, especially if for some reason your materials, maybe you've got a smaller brush and it's taking a little more time. That's fine. I'm not going to hurry you. All right, so we have got the yellow in, and the next we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab red. Red is really easy color to go ahead and do next. So we're going to grab just some solid red, and what we're going to do is we're going to try not to overlap. We're going to go right beside the yellow. So looking at my yellow, I'm going to do a red streak beside it to the right of this yellow, just straight up and down. It looks like I got too much water still in my brush that's watering down my paint, and that can happen. That can happen. So I got a little too wet. I'm going to just re-grab some new paint and bring that back down. There we go. That can happen very easily, but no worries at all. So I'm going to not have them overlap, but just get them right next to each other, right next to each other. And this one again is probably, you know, kind of 2 inches. Maybe I'm going to do a little wider at some point right there, but it's going to basically just stay that red streak right there beside the yellow. And then I'm also, since we're already into our red, what we're going to do is we're going to do another streak right here, but saving a space beside the yellow for some blue. So if you see, we've kind of got a red, yellow, blue in the center, and then there's a red, and then there's a blue on the other side. So I'm going to do a streak, like a stripe of blue on this side, and it's going to be at this corner going down, right? So I'm going to do this red going straight down here. And again, just leaving some space where my blue will be able to fill that in. Just again, it's a lot easier since we already have the color red on our brush to just grab that, while I'm there. So again, see how they don't have to be exact stripes. I've kind of eyeballed them, but they are more just kind of putting these blocks of color in. And like I said, this looks like a very far cry from our finished product. Honestly, it starts to look a little circusy, but it's okay. There are many paintings that halfway through a painting, I call it the ugly duckling stage. It kind of looks weird. You're like, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out. That's okay. The most important part about any painting is that you keep pushing through to finish it. And when you see it to the end, then sometimes you'll go, oh, it finally came together at the end. So don't worry, It's gonna look silly for a little bit, but then we'll get there. So yeah, so we've got those in. I've really rinsed my brush back out again. And now I'm gonna go ahead and grab my blue color. Grab my blue. Now, with my red still being a little wet, I'm going to really try to be careful not to cross over this. It could get a little muddy, but I can still show you some ways to fix it if they do cross over. But I'm going to go ahead and fill in this red, or no, the blue right next to the red. Honestly, that's a really pretty blue. Here we go. So I'm just going to, and if I cross over with the blue onto the yellow, actually I may end up with a little bit of green. So I'm really going to just kind of keep it right here in between, right there on the exposed white part. But it's okay if they do cross a little bit. That's fine. This is a nice, good, straight up and down motion. All right, and then we'll do the blue streak or stripe right on the far end of the canvas, the far right. Just going up and down. Now, I'm going to show you, if you don't have enough paint, it'll look kind of streaky like that, right? It's a little dry. And that is a technique we're actually going to be using in just a little bit, but we're wanting to make sure this is a nice solid layer of color. Nice solid layer. Yeah, not too thick. I don't want to see a glob of paint anywhere. That means there's too much. So I'm going to kind of just make sure it's a nice even coat and kind of finish. If you can see, there's still a little bit of white in between showing. That is absolutely fine. We're actually going to cover that up with some black. Oh wait, we'll be covering up those white spots with black. So there's no problem. I'm just going to rinse out my brush really quick. Be right back. All right, guys, I think we're ready to move on to the next part of our painting. So my painting is mainly dry. I may have a couple of wet spots, but this next part won't really matter as much because we're going to be starting to add some black. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my black color and add that to my plate. I guess I didn't need the white yet. I felt like I did, but I will end up using it, so don't worry. So I'm going to go ahead and get some black out. I've got all 5 of our colors on our plate right there. And this is going to kind of be a different technique than what we did doing the solid stripes. We're going to do kind of more of a streaking technique and letting it get lighter and lighter and softer pressure as we get towards the center. So let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. So I'm going to take my brush. I've still got this big brush that we were using. I'm going to get some black. Now black is a very strong color. So actually I'm going to get some, but see, I'm kind of tapping. I'm not going to get too much. I don't have a big glob. I really don't. I don't need as much of this color at one time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, get it to the top, and I'm going to put it down, and then I'm going to kind of streak it down and see how it's it kind of gets streaky. It doesn't cover all the way. You see that? So what I'm doing is I'm kind of getting a little bit of color, getting to the top up here, and then just pulling it down. And as it pull down, and I'm starting to run out of paint on my brush, I'm going to keep pulling so that I still see just kind of these little streaky parts of the black. And that's going to start building kind of this black frame. It's going to start to tone down this color. So I'll get some black, get a little bit of black on my brush, get it to the top, and pull down but I'm not pulling down too far. I don't want to cover up all the color that I just did, right? You know, I mean, that might have been a little far, but you know what? I'm going to go with it. Sometimes that happens. That means I probably just had a little too much. But I'm going to, you know, we are going to have more solid black up at the top edge. But then as I pull down, it's just going to have a lot, that black edge is going to get behind. Yes?
So I went all the way down. Is there any way I can fix that?
Yeah, let's see. The best way would probably be, you may need to let that dry, go back over with a little bit of white again, and then put that color back in. So move on to the next areas of your canvas, let that dry, and we'll be able to kind of put that back in. So that's okay. I mean, that can happen. Like I said, I went a little too far on that spot right there, and I'm like, I kind of wish I hadn't. It's going to be more, you kind of wanting to kind of stop like part of the way. You're not wanting to go all the way down, because what we'll do is we'll turn this over and we'll go from the bottom to the top. We'll kind of meet it in the center.
Right.
So we don't have to do a full streak to get this. We're gonna go from the top to the bottom and then the bottom to the top and kind of meet in the center. Okay? So that's how we'll get this in. Honestly, I like to just go ahead and do a downward motion. I feel that's easier for me. So I'll probably end up flipping my canvas over to make it easier for me. But if you want to do still just kind of an upward motion, you could. The other thing is, while I have, just like I said, when I go and get the paint, I'm not dipping deep, deep, deep in that big blob. I'm kind of just pulling and kind of getting a little paint on my brush at one time. I'm going to also come in between, I'm going to turn my brush to the side, and I'm going to come in between the colors and kind of rub in kind of a little bit of streaks between the colors. Do you see that? I'm covering up those white spots that I kind of left in between my stripes, but I'm not doing it too dark. Kind of making it that streaky. See how that one kind of got streaky right there? Look at that. See? And honestly, this painting can look different every time you do it, because it just might be the way that you put pressure on your brush that time, the way the paint's wanting to cooperate. So I will make this painting and it will look different almost every single time. Every time, and that's okay. That is okay. Like I said, I do like being able to turn my painting over. I feel like it gives me a little more control when I'm doing the next part, because you're right, going all the way down, that's really tough. It really is. So now I'm going to flip my canvas. Look at this. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to flip my canvas over right now, and I'm going to do the same thing, where I'm going to start up here at the top again, start at the top and kind of pull down and kind of get it where I'm pulling the paint. But again, I don't have too much. If you've got too much paint, you'll probably pull and you won't get to where it's streaky, right? So you have to just tap little tiny bits of paint on that brush. You can always go back and get more. That's okay. If you're like, man, I really didn't get enough. But we're almost kind of scrubbing this paint on here, which will give us a little more control. And see, we're starting to get to where, see, we don't see the ends of the stripe anymore. We kind of are making this weird kind of shape here that I see, like little windows of color that are peeking through now, right? And so my eye doesn't see that stripe as much anymore. I see these colors kind of poking through, right? And yes, if you've lost a little too much color, a way to always go and fix something, I always go through white paint the most, because white is the thing that you can go back And if you were a little kid like me growing up in school, we had white out. And so if we made a mistake, we'd have to cover it back over with some white, and then we'd go back and fix it. Well, white paint can actually do about the same thing. Is you can kind of white it out, go back, and fix it. So I'm just kind of looking at the shape of these colors. If I want to, I can really make sure and just have a little bit of black, and if I want to even do very light streaks of black over top, right, that makes it seem less less harsh, right? I can get these little, look how it's just barely, I'm like barely got any paint on my brush. I'm just kind of, it's what they actually call it, dry brushing. And it kind of streaks it. So you're just trying to get to where you've got a little bit of color peeking through. I'm going to turn mine back around because technically I was saying that was the top, but it could have stayed the other way too. Could have stayed that other way. That's fine. If you see that you don't like that much colors at the top showing through, right, you can always kind of go back and fix some of that. I do like having more of a solid black at the top. Maybe, oh look, I've still got a lot on my brush. I'm gonna just kind of gently kind of dry brush it. And now suddenly I've got these weird kind of windows of color, right? I've got windows of color. I've toned down that really, really bright color by doing this dry brushing over top, where it only adds just a little bit, like just little tiny dots of black. It almost looks like wood grain, right? So this is a really neat technique, and you don't need a lot of paint at all. You see, I haven't dipped my brush in at all in my paint. I'm just trying to rub off what little color is still left on my brush. So that's kind of the background right there. And again, we didn't have to use a lot of paint, so this layer should dry very quickly, which is great because then it helps us be able to move on to the next layer a lot sooner. So I'm seeing a couple, for me, I see a little white streak right there. Maybe I'll try to get that. Come on, there we go. I got it. I didn't want to do too much. Like I said, it's always easier to add a little more paint and then to take it off at this point, but there really is not a wrong way to do this. It's going to be the way that you work on it, right? So I am going to be done right now. So I'm going to take my brush and really, really rinse it. We are done with this brush right now, but we want to make sure and rinse it out. If we leave it with the paint in it, it will dry and harden and we cannot use it again. So I'm going to rinse, 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 rinse. And if you have any questions, this is going to be a great time to ask. All right, guys, so we are going to move on to the next stage, which is going to need our piece of chalk. The reason I like doing chalk is it's a great way to draw in some shapes that if you're not completely happy with it, all you have to do is use a rag and wipe it right off. So there's no complete commitment. If you're like, oh, I don't like how that turned out, no problem, you can wipe it off. What we're going to do is we're going to chalk in these shapes of these dandelions. They're kind of a stylized, kind of almost like a cartoon dandelion, but that's kind of fun, right? So let's see. First one, I always like doing this first one kind of right here in the center, because I want it to live where the yellow is. I'm going to start, I'm going to give it a little point right here, and from this point, from a little dot right here, I'm going to start making little lines that go up and kind of out like a little starburst, like almost like a firework, I guess. So it's gonna go out and out and out. Here we go, I'll get you closer. Up and out. And it kind of does like almost like a half star burst. It's not a full one. And then this last part is the stem that will kind of come down and kind of curve. And each one of these little ones have a dot on the end. Now it doesn't show up as much as our white paint will, but that is okay. And again, if you don't like the shape, you're like, oh, I don't like the way I did that stem. You take that rag and you just wipe that right off and you do it again. So maybe you want to curve it more like that, which is how I do want to now. All right, so that's one of them. We're going to do another one down here. Another one. So I'll do a little point, and this one's going to kind of curve its little dandelion points this way, and its stem is going to cross over the one we just did and come over here. So it's going to cross over. I know there's a point that it's hard to see. There you go. There we go. So there's another one. We've got a tall one up here. So I'll do another little point. And these are going to kind of be like long. Whoop. Again, if you mess up, you just wipe it right off. Long little curvy stem ones. It's almost like a half dandelion, or not all the way open. And then this stem is going to do a nice long curve all the way down there. Nice long curve there. And then our last one, we'll put him over here, little spot, and he's got some curves going that way. And his stem is going to meet up with the crisscross stem right there. So these two are kind of like twin sisters. They're just lean in different ways. And again, we're chalking this in to make it easier for ourselves. We're just making it easier. If you see something and you're like, I really don't like the way that is, we are not committed to this at all. This is chalk. If you are wiping it off, it's just very, very easy. And after we're done painting, we will be able to wipe it off very easy. So we got our shapes in with our chalk. And then the last thing that we have to do is we are just going to paint right over the chalk as our guideline. This is when I'm going to switch to more of a round pointy brush. The thing with the pointy brush, this brush, it doesn't want to be smashed. We don't need hard pressure. Look how it bends so much. It likes to be tickled. It likes to be very, very light, and that will make sure that your lines are not big and fat if you don't want them to be. If you do, that's fine. But if you'd like to stay more in kind of more of like a medium line, you're gonna have the paint at the tip of your brush, and you're going to do nice light pressure, not the same that we would do on a pencil. More like if you were trying to write with a feather. So I'm going to take my brush, which is dry. I need it damp before I dip it in my paint. So I'm going to drag that off. If your paint has gotten way too dirty, where if you feel like if you get in this white paint and it's not going to be white anymore, maybe you're going to have to change the water. I think I'm going to give mine a try and just see. But I've got some white right here. I'm going to dip right into the white. Sometimes my white gets a little dried out, so I might even have to add just a little drop of water for mine to flow better. And that can happen for mine. We put that white out accidentally a little early. So now I'm just going to follow my chalk lines. You can paint right over top of the chalk. Look, it's fine. We just paint right over top of the chalk. The only downside to painting over chalk is that the chalk will start to dry out your brush a little bit. It's starting to try to absorb some of the moisture. So you'll have to grab a little more paint maybe sooner than if there was no chalk. And a little tip I like to do for these circles is I put the brush right down here, I tap it down, and then I just kind of wiggle it around. So it's like it almost does it squish down and a wiggle to get a little dot right there. It's like a little dance, but it can be any way that you feel like you want to do that. And then we'll do the stem all the way down, and if I'm starting to lose it because the chalk is drying, you see the chalk dried out my brush before I made it all the way down, so I gotta get more paint and maybe even go up and meet it. There we go. So there's my first dandelion puff that I've gotten in. Now I didn't cover up all of the chalk. That's okay. When the painting is dry, all we have to do is with a damp cloth, you can just wipe and make that chalk disappear. No one will know the wiser that you use chalk to help you guide that, and they'll go, wow, how did you do that? And then impress everybody, which I am impressed with you anyway. So I am proud of you for sticking in with this, trying something new. Maybe you've never done the dry brushing before. Maybe you made a mistake and thought you messed up, but you kept going, and I'm so proud of you for doing that. So we're just gonna go back over what we already drew. So this is still where you can have a choice where you're like, man, I didn't like where I put that, or I don't know, I don't like the shape. I will say it's much harder once you cover it with the white paint. So I would say this is your time while it's chalk. Once you do the white paint, we kind of committed to it, but it's never completely permanent. You can always fix it. You can. And so this is, I'm going to just keep finishing my dandelion puffs out while you finish yours. And again, I'm dipping back in because the chalk is drying out my brush. So don't worry if you feel like, man, why do I have to keep getting paint? It's doing the same thing to me. It is. Oh, did I make it? Oh, barely. Almost made it. Back on the upstroke. There we go. I got it. And then we'll do these last little ones over here. Kind of like this one kind of went kind of crazy this time on me, but I like it. He has personality. Got a little personality over here. And then dandelion puff. I'm so excited. Almost done. This is the last little bit. We're in the home stretch. Home stretch of this painting. And we've got our abstract dandelion puffs. So I am so proud of you for sticking with this, for getting this done. If there's anything that you see from the example that you wish that maybe you'd done differently or better, you can always go back and change. I am so excited that you were able to stick around and do this, and I will see you next time.